So let's ask Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville what he thinks about communist China 90 miles off the coast of the U.S., communist China. And also perhaps a word on the Trump indictment. Mr. Tuberville, welcome back, sir. Just a quick word on the Trump indictment. We've covered it. You've looked at it. Has your support for President Trump moved at all in the light of this?
Makes it even stronger, Larry. What, are we living in a third world country now where the political opponents, especially one in the White House now, is going after somebody that he's going to have to run against in the next election? If you live in a glass house, you don't throw rocks. And he's opened a can of worms now, the Department of Justice has, that's really ignited the Republican Party, and I think even a lot of the Democrats. They look at this going, what kind of world do we live in now? Very impartial. I heard you earlier talking about senators with classified documents. Every time I go in to read a classified document, they search you when you leave. You are not allowed to carry classified documents out of what we call the SCIF. And so it's just unfortunate all this is going on. President Trump will be stronger from this. He can handle it. He knows adversity. He fights through it. But the American people need to see through all this. And hopefully this will clear up in a very short period of time and get this behind us.
Senator, I know you're on the warpath about China's cryptocurrency activity, but I just want to throw in one. You know, this story, China now opening up a spy operation in Cuba. Of course, the Bidens denied it. Then, of course, they've had to backtrack and said, yeah, then they blamed Donald Trump. The trouble is, John Radcliffe, who was the director of national intelligence under Trump, said no such thing. There was no China spying operation in Cuba. This is a recent development. What do you think about this spying operation, 90 miles off the coast of Florida?
Well, it's typical because President Biden, since he's been there for 2.5 years, has showed weakness in everything that he's done. He let a balloon go all the way across our country and without doing anything about it. Obviously compromised, Larry. But it makes sense for China now to say, hey, we can do pretty much anything we want. So moving a spy office or whatever they call it into Cuba, it probably makes sense to them. At this time, President Trump would have never put up with it. And it's going to cause us some problems, obviously. They'll be closer, be able to do pretty much anything they want. But you got to remember, too, Larry, they've got satellites in space right now that does pretty much the same thing. But it just shows you that they're not concerned about Joe Biden or the Department of Justice or military. They pretty much do what they want.
You know, I just would say, sir, that a listening post in Cuba is one thing. Bringing in weapons and missiles could be another. We've lived through that. I mean, I was a kid during the Cuban Missile Crisis back in 1962. So I just want to say, if the Bidens would please open their eyes and maybe develop some toughness with China. Lord knows, you know, you give China a half an inch, and they take 100 miles. Anyway, Senator, you're on the warpath about China doing cryptocurrency operations in the U.S. Tell us about that.
Yeah, Larry, you and I talked about this 6-7 months ago. Crypto's here to stay, and so we've got to have regulations. But the thing that we're running into now is we've got what we call crypto exchanges that's coming around all over around the country. They have to be approved by the SEC and FINRA, the two regulators. And, we all know that they're our number one adversary, the Republicans, Democrats, people across the country, but somebody needs to tell our financial regulators, because what's happened recently, there's a company called Promethea that has been given the rights for a crypto exchange. Well, unfortunately, their biggest investor is Wang John, which is a communist China party company. It's their biggest investor. Now, what's going on with our regulators? Now, there was several dozen people that applied for this, American companies, but they overlooked them and went to a company that is partly owned by the Chinese Communist Party. They'll be able to pick up any kind of data that goes through this exchange. It really hurts the American people. Senator Gillibrand and I have a bill that we introduced last week that will protect and keep out Chinese Communist Party investors out of crypto, out of the exchanges. I'm on the Ag Committee. The Farm Bill, hopefully, that we put in this year will give us an opportunity to make sure that we can keep these people out of the Chinese Communist Party and keep them out of our exchanges. But you know, these regulators are asleep at the wheel. It's just another thing that the Biden administration's let the Chinese do and get by with, and we got to put a stop to it.
All right. Good luck on the bill. I think you're dead right. Absolutely, completely right. Senator Tommy Tuberville, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Larry.